This is a video tutorial on how to manage and develop quizzes and examinations on StudySmart. This video looks at how to set access to a quiz, and that's how to set the parameters for students undertaking the quiz on a specific date or across a series of specific dates, as well as setting the closing date for the quiz, and some of the parameters around student feedback and the display of the quiz or examination online. Following on from the first video, which is where we showed how to create a quiz and then to populate it with questions, now we're going to look at how to set the quiz or examination so that students can undertake the quiz or examination on a specific date or across a series of specific dates. Now what we do here is making sure of a couple of things. One is, again, you would have to be an editing teacher. That would have to be your role and identified by the IT team or the educational technology team to make sure you have access to set these parameters. Now, what you do is also have to make sure you have your editing turned on. So in this case, I'll just turn the editing off for just a moment. We can start fresh. Turn the editing on. You'll see that a series of icons now has appeared that we have the editing turned on. And here under quiz number 3, which is the quiz we created, you'll get the button or the drop-down menu for Edit. And if you hold down on it and go to Edit Settings, it'll come up with this page, which is where we originally named our quiz. But down below is where we can start doing some of the other options for undertaking the quiz. The first one is timing, and this is where you can set the opening and close dates for the quiz or examination. You also have to ensure you click on Enable because that will actually turn on those dates. If you have those unticked, no matter what date you put in here, it won't catch. You have to make sure those buttons are clicked. You can set the time limit, so you can set it for 20 minutes, 60 minutes, 120 minutes. That's the time limit where you can be set for each quiz or exam. And we also have an option for a submission grace period. Martin College does not have a grace period for submissions. The specified time limit is the maximum time limit for the quiz or examination. Under grade is where we can actually set a couple parameters in regards to the exam, and they're actually quite important. First is the grade to pass component, and this is actually the minimum grade the student has to achieve to pass the quiz or examination. Now, we estimated when we developed quiz number 3, we actually set the component or the grade component to be 20 marks or 20 marks. So in this case, it's 50% of that, or 10 is actually the grade to pass. That students have to get half the questions correct to pass the exam. Some of these components, especially this one, they're set for both for yourself in regards to recording grades, but they're also become part of the grade book and part of the management of the academic grading system. We also set under here the attempts allowed, which is actually how many times students are allowed to take the quiz or exam, and that's always set to 1. We do not allow any sort of multiple quizzes or exams. You only get 1 try. If a student feels that they deserve, for whatever reason, a second attempt, they can make a submission to the lecturer and then to Martin College Academic Management to retake an exam if they think appropriate. The grade category and grade methods are simply ways that we use the information to create the grade books for the different subjects. In fact, you'll see that in some instances that they're inactive. We have uncategorized, but we have coursework and exam, and those are actually components or exams already within the QBM 200 subject. But if we had a number of exams or quizzes within here, we could actually list the grade category that these were listed under. But for your work, we'll just leave them as uncategorized. Later, we can actually set them to be under quizzes or under examinations. And then we can go on down to layout. The layout simply shows us how you want to lay out the questions. You can have a question on every page, or you can have 2 questions on every page. We generally leave it as 1 question on every page. That's done so the students don't get too much overload of seeing all those questions at once. It also precludes the chance of someone cheating by seeing several questions on someone else's computer and at least being aware of perhaps some of the questions that are coming up. On question behavior, this is how the questions will react or behave inside the question. We have shuffle within questions, meaning you can shuffle the answers around inside of the question. We don't allow that though because any number of our question banks have a all of the above option in some questions as multiple choice, and we can't have option A being all of the above. So shuffle within questions is no. We can shuffle the questions themselves, but we don't want to shuffle the answers for those questions. And then we have how questions behave. And this is how you can essentially set elements of the feedback. We'll cover this a little bit later in another video, which is on providing feedback to students, but we use deferred feedback, which means when the students undertake the exam, they don't receive immediate feedback. They receive feedback approximately 1 week later in regards to their questions. That's done so that students who are perhaps doing it over a period of time, or there's an open of from say Monday to Wednesday for students to take a quiz or examination. Deferred feedback ensures that no one finds out that any of what the right or wrong answers are by talking to other students who might have already gotten feedback on their examinations. There are review options, and in this case, because we're using deferred feedback, none of these options will be provided to the students either during the attempt, immediately after the attempt, or later while this quiz is still open. But after the quiz is closed, the feedback the students will answer or will receive will show what the question was, whether it was correct, the marks they received. They can then receive specific feedback, general feedback. They also get the right answer to that question, and there's also overall feedback. We'll talk in another video in regards to how to provide specific feedback, general feedback, and overall feedback to students in regards to their questions. Appearance is just one where you can actually show the students if they have their photographs or pictures that comes up on the computer screen. This we rarely, if ever, use. The decimal places in the grades, we have 2, so you receive a grade of 52.85. That's why we have the 2 decimal points. Extra restrictions on attempts. We don't allow any attempts, second attempts or extra attempts on a quiz unless students make a submission for special consideration. We don't provide a second chance at taking a quiz or exam unless a student makes an approach to the lecturer or to Martin College Academic Management for that. The next option is for overall feedback. And overall feedback is a way that you can provide feedback to all the students with essentially the same comments. And it's actually done by grade boundary, so 100% being the maximum grade. Our next boundary down for our grading methodology is 85%. So all grades falling between 85 and 100% will receive this feedback. Excellent work. Well done. And we can then go down to the next grade boundary, which is 75%. And the comment I would put in here would be for all people who achieved between 75 and 85%. And it'd be great work. Very good job. Then I'll set the next grade down at 65%. So this comment that I put in now here underneath the grade boundary for 75% would be for all people between 65 and 75%. And our grade boundary is 50%. And everything below that is a fail. And here at this grade boundary, for these grade boundaries, we would enter this data. And we then have our final grade boundary here, which would be, say, 0% or 1%, 0%. So all people who achieved between 0 and 50%, which would be a fail, need more study, or whatever you think would be the best feedback in regards to the students. So this overall feedback allows you to provide a level of feedback to all students whose grades fall between this boundary. Now this is overall feedback. There's also general feedback and specific feedback, and those will be addressed in another video called How to Provide Feedback to Students. So that's just one way that you can provide feedback overall to each student who undertakes this quiz or this examination whose grades fall within these boundaries. We then have common module settings, and again, this is used by the academic management team, the educational technology team. It's a way we organize the groups of students in the different cohorts. You wouldn't have to worry with this. We can also do a restrict access, and again, this is done for restricting access to students in regards to specific feedback and specific requirements that they may require. The last component here is activity completion. This program is set up for this, but none of the assessments we develop use this option. And this is for if you're doing a series of sequential submissions that were attaining a final grade. And this is a way that this actually tracks and marks sequential submissions for a final grade. We don't do that at Martin College within the Bachelor of Business. Each submission is graded individually and submitted individually and assessed individually. We don't get a component A, component B, component C, and then add all three of those together to make a final grade. You're graded on A, you're graded on B, and you're graded on C, each one individually. But if we were doing some sort of activity completion, which was using those sequential submissions, this is where that sort of monitoring and the parameters are set for those types of submissions. So this is how you can set the quiz's timing, and also in regards to other elements, as I said, about question behavior in regards to deferred feedback, which is very important because we want to ensure that there's always deferred feedback and that we're not giving students immediate feedback, which sounds like that'd be what you'd really want to do, but because of the nature of the distance students, some students, even within classrooms, some may end up taking it in Sydney on one day, and people in Melbourne taking it on another day, and people in Brisbane taking it another day. And because of that, we always want to make sure that people are not getting feedback for their exams until everyone gets their feedback at exactly the same time. So that is how you can set all of those parameters. And when you're happy with them, or that's how you want to set them, you simply save and return to course by clicking here at the very bottom. And any options or dates or settings that you've put in, saved and applied to the quiz or examination that you've developed. And that's how you can set those parameters for a quiz or examination.